All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Scott, and welcome to the weekly trade report video. Today is February 26, 2017. So, okay, guys, let's first take a look at the Dow Jones ETF here, the DIA. So, it looks like the Dow is still in the solid uptrend. So, it broke out of this range back here, and then we've had all these green days. Thursday was looks like it was slightly weak, and then Friday it looked like it was going to be weak on Friday. The market opened pretty red, and then it just kind of ran up the rest of the day. So um, the markets are pretty resilient right now and still in a solid uptrend. Although I will say that I'm not finding as many good setups as I usually do in my scans. So it's becoming tougher to find really good setups. So maybe the market is going to get into some kind of sideways consolidation again. Maybe like this action back here, or something like that. But you never know. Monday could be a big rally, and then all of a sudden, a lot more setups pop up. In my scans. But so far, it still looks like the market is strong here, even though we had a little bit of weakness on Thursday and Friday. SPY, similar thing here. We had the range breakout, all these green days, and then basically it's having trouble punching through this area up here at around 237 area. So maybe we're going to get into some range consolidation after this move. Again, who knows? But it's still longer term bullish as far as I can tell. Let's see, IWM, small caps, Russell 2000. So this one had a breakout, had this resistance up here at around 138, where it had tested 1, 2, 3, kind of 4, and then 5 it broke. And this one actually pulled back, but it closed above it on Friday, even though it went below. It gapped, or it ran up and closed at the high of the day. So once again, there was some weakness late last week, but overall the market still looks pretty resilient overall. XLF, the financial sector, still think this one looks good here. A lot of good looking banks on my scans, even though a lot of them are having issues, or having a hard time actually breaking out through resistance. And this is kind of reflected here in this XLF chart, where you had the run up, the breakout of this range here, which I traded for a couple of days and made some pretty good money. But then it just kind of got into this choppy range here. So XLF looks like it's just consolidating. I do think it's going to head higher. A lot of the banks, if you go through FinViz, you can kind of look at the banking sector, individual banks, Southeast, Northwest, all that type of thing, and you'll see some really nice patterns. They're kind of slow movers, the banks are, but anyway, this XLF does look like it's eventually going to make some new highs after it consolidates there. So I do like the banking sector still. Biotechs, yeah, not seeing too much on this chart here. It looks like it did break out through this range here, had a nice run up, and then kind of pulled back here to maybe this looks like a support area from this recent high. Looking at it longer term, maybe it looks like it tapped out at the recent resistance area right up in here. So yeah, not seeing anything super bullish or bearish on the biotech sector. There's a couple of good setups in the sector, but overall not overly bullish or bearish either way. So this is one I added to the watch list let's see, was it Monday? I think it was Monday. But anyway, this is XLRE, which is a real estate select fund. So basically, real estate investment trust, REITs. A lot of those are breaking out. A lot of those have some really nice patterns, and we got one on the watch list for Monday. But you can see here where it kept tapping this area here, this 3150, and then right here put in a higher low and just kind of grind it up. And this was a breakout, very nice breakout here. And then you can see it just kind of grinding higher. So longer term, the REITs, real estate investment trusts, look pretty good. this was a long downtrend here. Basically, you can kind of see, drawing a line, kind of like that, and then it started to bottom out and starting a new uptrend now in the real estate investment trust. So it's a good sector to look at. There's some good setups, decent setups there. All right, so let's get into some individual names that I traded this week. So first up, let's take a look at this OWCP. So wow, what a move this thing has had. You know, I bought this one last Friday, which was you know, basically on this, let me put a trend line here, basically on this 75 break, and you know, had a pretty good sized position in it, and I held it over the weekend expecting it to gap, and it sure enough did. And so I did really well with this, but I sold it basically on Tuesday at, you know, basically at the open at 106. So that was my average I got out. So I mean, think about it. You know, I'm in at 74 cents, and you know, it closes at, you know, 94 cents, and then gaps up to 106. I mean, that's a pretty nice profit. I think I made 40% on the trade, but as you can see, this thing ran all day, and I missed a huge run up here. So, you know, basically that's the benefit of leaving a trailer or selling half and or selling 3/4 and leaving some. That way, you know, when you get these monster moves like that, you can catch some of it with another piece of your position, although you lock in profits on at least half of it. So anyway, this is a marijuana stock, and you know, I'm watching this thing, and sure enough, this thing looks like it's going higher. I know this thing has had a big move here, but you can see this big day here kind of reverse from 3, and then it pulled back to $1.50, and now it's right back up there at that breakout level. Okay, so this stock, guys, this one looks like it's going to break out, and it could have another day like it did on Tuesday. I mean, this thing, it ran up, pulled back, and then now it's right back near the highs. So actually, this is probably my top watch for Monday. And I know it looks extended, but I mean, if this thing opens and starts going, it could be another big runner. So a stock is never too high to buy or never too low to sell. Sometimes, you know, this thing could go to $3, $4, $5, who knows. But this pattern looks very strong. I think this OWCP has got more upside, and I will definitely be looking to enter this one on Monday. So great looking setup there, OWCP. Made some pretty good money on it, but it does look like it's going to go higher, and I will definitely enter that one. Okay, so next up, and so ACBFF. So what was interesting last week is I was very bullish on these Canadian marijuana stocks because they had a nice pattern. And let's just take a look at what I was seeing on this one. So this one had a spot here, basically right here around $2, okay? I had tapped it right around this area, tapped it a couple times here, failed and pulled back, and then, so I was looking to enter this one. Let me see if I can get a 50-day. Okay, so basically here was the kind of the area, right in this area here, right? And so on this day here, when it was up near 2, I was looking to enter this thing if it could break through 2, and sure enough, it did on this day, and it had some good volume, and this thing went. So I actually took a position, and I was like, okay, this thing's ready to make a multi-day move. And so it ran up, and then all of a sudden, on Thursday, it was acting very well, right? And I'm by the way, I'm in this one and TWMJF on Thursday, right? And so it's basically, I'm like, okay, as long as it holds in this area, 210-ish, you know, I don't care if it pulls back intraday, whatever, still looks good. Well, let's take a look at the intraday on Thursday. So let's go to like a 30-minute chart, and let's look at a 2-day and 3-day, okay? Okay, so what happened was, so this is, let me see if I can do like a 15-minute or something like that. So yeah, so right in here, so I'm watching this is on Thursday, right? And it just looks like normal consolidation. I'm not really too concerned at this point. But then all of a sudden you started seeing the selling, and it started to break down below this 210 area, right in this area here, and I didn't really know why, but I was like, something's not right. The stock's not acting right. So I closed all my positions, both TWMJF and this one here, and because it just wasn't acting right. I didn't really know if there was any news or anything, but anyway, that's what I did. The market wasn't acting right, and I was like, these stocks aren't doing what I expect them to do. So I closed them, and then sure enough, there was some news about Spicer mentioning that the White House was going to crack down on legalized recreational marijuana, and basically the whole sector went into like a panic mode. And then Friday, basically everything except OWCP, I might add, everything in the marijuana sector kind of fell off a cliff on Friday. Had some huge spikes down, and so anyway, I don't think that I listened to what Spicer said, and I don't think that his words were. I think they're very vague, and I don't think it really gave clarification to what the administration is really going to do with respect to recreational marijuana. But so anyway, I think that there's going to be some clarification, and I don't think that Trump is going to go after the legal marijuana industry, in places like California, Colorado, and all that type of stuff. So I do think there's going to be some clarification, and he's going to have to come out and kind of give his position on respect to that, because there's a lot of concern about that now. But anyway, that was the reason for that sell-off. And so, oftentimes you don't know the reason until after the fact, but you got to act immediately. So that's why when a stock's not acting right, or a breakout fails, or anything like that, be willing to act and pull the trigger. You can always get back in, right? And so, this could be one of those things where Trump comes out and says that he's not going to mess with the states and he's going to let them go forward, and then all the sector starts rallying again. It could be like a complete 180. So anyway, that's kind of what happened to me on Thursday when I closed out all my positions, because the market wasn't acting right, and that was the reason. It's because I was in these marijuana plays. But so anyway, that was ACBFF, and then let's see here. Yeah, and here's another one, another Canadian marijuana stock. And another thing to keep in mind is that Canada is in the process of kind of putting some legislation through to legalize it for the whole country, and that's why both with these patterns here, and with respect to kind of knowing what's happening in Canada with the legalization, this why I was kind of bullish on these Canadian stocks. So it was a pattern, but it's also knowing the reason behind the pattern, which is if Canada passes legal recreational marijuana for the country, then these things should do very well. And so anyway, this one, APHQF, still looks pretty good. You can see where it kind of sold off, but it regained most of that on Friday. So I don't think these trades are over with yet. I'm just keeping an eye on them and see this one if it can get back up there through this 510 level. That's an area to watch there. But I'm still watching all the Canadian plays. And then here's TWMJF also, which is one I traded last week, and I was basically up here at 960, 970, 60, something like that, and I sold it, took a loss, and then I tried to re-enter it again, and then it sold off again, so I had to cut it. So it was like two small losses in a row, and then I got out before this. But so anyway, couple paper cuts on that one. But once again, as long as you keep those losses small, when you hit a nice one like OWCP, it all pays for all the losses plus. All right, so here's another one here, IPI, another one that I took a hit on last week. I tried to enter this one on a pullback to, let's see here. So yeah, I was thinking this one was going to, try to move this one, okay, I can. So I was thinking somewhere in this like 225 area, this thing was going to get a bounce because it looked like that was kind of a general support area, like right in here, which is where I had this big breakout earlier in the week. And I thought this thing could pull back and find support there, but it didn't. It kind of fell through it. So I had to cut this one too. This was a small loss, this IPI. So anyway, this one's a tough trader, this IPI. So it's getting dinged on it a couple of times. So I might just stay away from this IPI until I really see a good pattern there. But that was another small loss I took last week. All right, so next up is Cliff, CLF. So this one was on the watch list, and what I was looking at, let's see, was kind of, if you look at a longer term chart, it had this support area right up in here, right above, like right in 1050 area, looked like it could have some support. And so Trump came out and said something about not implementing some kind of measure until next 2018. I think it was like infrastructure building or something, which affects the steel companies. And so all the steel companies had this really red day. And so I was thinking, okay, this one actually had good earnings, which was the reason for this big gap up on this day. And then it looked like it was creating a nice bull flag to move higher, but then that news from Trump came out and they just took a dump, all the steel names. So this one I was like, okay, maybe in this 1050 area it's going to find support. And if it doesn't find support there, the next logical spot would be down here at around $10 a share, okay? So let's just remove this one and kind of zoom in. Like a 50-day. So take a look at this chart here, you know, right around $10. See that? So here was the earnings, ran up, and then it pulled all the way back. So I was actually thinking about entering this thing around $10 on Friday if it could get there. And pre-market it was down at like 10.20, something like that. And I almost pulled the trigger, but I waited, and sure enough, it did rally up. So it was a nice pullback to this $10 area, which was a nice whole number. It was the beginning of this, basically, the top of this gap right here on the earnings. And then, but anyway, on Friday I did trade this intraday, and as I seen it rallying, let's take a look at the intraday on Friday. Okay, so it had this spot here. It kind of rallied up. Let's see today. Okay. So basically, this was Friday's chart. Okay, and it had this big run up from the early morning. Put in this high right around 1070, 77, 78, 76, something like that. Then it pulled back, and then it rallied all the way back to near 1076 area. And so I took a position in here, thinking this thing was going to break high a day. Basically, it's an opening range breakout type of play. It's a day trade, really. And so it sure enough did. It really ran up here. And so just by, I think, sheer luck, I actually got out most of my position right up here at 1094. And then it pulled back, kind of consolidated, and I took the rest of it off right in this 1080 area. So it was a nice day trade. I made, I don't know, 20 cents a share or something, but then it just kind of consolidated all day. But I'm still watching this cliff chart, and I do think that eventually this thing's going to get back up here to 12. I mean, once that news of Trump's comments or whatever, he has a tendency to make comments, and the stocks will just take a hard hit or whatever, and then they recover. So Cliff, I still think this is a good looking setup here, but I'll keep watching it for next week. Zixi, this one was on the watch list last week and I think the week before. And here was the pattern. Basically, you had a spot right around the 5 area, which was a high back here, and then right in here it kind of poked through a little bit, and then it consolidated right around that 5 spot. And so I was posting this chart pattern, which looked really nice. And this is one I didn't trade, although it ended up being a really nice mover. And so if you look here at this thing, a break of 5, it really just ran for 1, 2, 3, 4 days. And even on this day here when the market was weak, this one had a nice move. Still looks pretty good. But if you were trading this, what I would look for as a profit target would be to take the measured depth um, of this pattern here. So I would use, say, 440 to 5, right? So that would be 60 cents profit. So right around 560 would be your profit target. You know, you can see it got to 540. That's a pretty good gain there. You know, you might want to take, you know, it might have been a good idea before it actually hits its profit target to take some off before then, you know, selling partials. But anyway, this one still looks good. You know, had a nice breakout. It was a good pattern. I just didn't trade it for whatever reason. That's ZIXI. So SBLK, this is a shipping company. A lot of these shippers have some pretty good looking setups here. This one, kind of watching this spot here, right around this, let's see here, was it, I don't know, basically 930. If you take a look at this chart, this was, let's see, this was a kind of a bull flag pattern. See, it kind of ran up and then kind of consolidated sideways. And then on this day, it gapped up and basically right through this 934 area, which is kind of a high in here and here, looked like it was going to go, and it did have a nice day right there. It actually broke that. This day it kind of pulled back, so still kind of consolidating, I guess you will, after this big up day right here, this big breakout on heavy volume. But the shipping sector, this one still looks like it's going to go higher. Maybe you use this 980 area, which is the high of this candle here for a buy trigger. But this one still looks pretty good, one to watch. SBLK. Another shipper, Salt. You know, this one looks like the area, the breakout was right there at 810, got rejected. So this one also looks like it's just still in this sideways mode. No trade at the moment. Still has a pretty good chart pattern though, but nothing. No trade immediate right now that I can see. Next up, GBNK. This one is been watching this one for a while, but it's got very low volume and just keeps kind of sitting around this 25 area, and it does look like it's eventually going to break, but it's just sitting right around 25, and it can't really break through that area. And so I do think once the financial sector XLF starts to go, this one's eventually going to go. It's just a slow mover, but it's a nice chart. It's just slow, and I think if you're, you could trade the individual banks, or you could just trade XLF. You know, they're all going to kind of move in sequence with each other. But anyway, it's still a good looking chart, GBNK. LTRX, this one, here was the pattern here. We had this on the watch list last week, kind of through this area here. Flag pattern there, had a nice break, and once again, you can kind of use the depth of the pattern as your first target, if you will. So let's say that the depth is right around this 207 area. Your breakout's 235, so you take the delta, basically the difference between 235 and 207, and you add that on to the breakout spot, and that gives you your first target. But this one still looks like it's just, after it broke out, just consolidating for a move higher. So this one still looks good to me. Lennar, this is a home builder stock. And what I've seen on this chart was this 47 spot, basically on this day here where it closed right at 47. Well, it was going to break out of this pattern, and it did, but then it pulled all the way back to 47. But it still looks like a decent chart, just not a really dynamic mover. Not the most greatest looking setup there. So, but the chart's not bad. It's not bad, just just not the greatest looking setup that to trade. All right, so this is a good example, this AAON. So let's take a look at what I've seen on this chart. So this one, a couple patterns here. This one had a spot here, right up here, where you can see where it tapped at resistance out of this range break. So I had this breakout, and then it basically faded, and kind of set up this new pattern here, right at 35, I think. Let's see, let's zoom in. So yeah, so right up here. And here's what I was seeing on the chart, kind of this pattern here, right? So, basically the buy trigger was on a breakout of this 35 area, if it could get there, and sure enough, it didn't get there. And, it actually had earnings on Thursday, so always advise everyone to don't hold through earnings no matter how much you think you know about the stock or whatever. It's a complete gamble. And this type of stuff happens. This massive gap down, all kinds of volatility during the day, and then now it's right back up here near, basically in this range here. So maybe it does get through 35 next week. It's a general building material, and the sector looks pretty good, but just a good example of how holding through earnings is just no matter how good the chart looks, these things happen, and it becomes it's just, there's no way, unless you've got inside information or you've got some type of edge, it's really a bad idea. So I've learned that the hard way over time. So if you do have a nice profit on a position from a lower price, maybe you can hold some of that position through the earnings, but in general, it's a coin flip and you really have no edge. So there's AAON. So that pattern failed, but it actually, if it can actually break through 35, it'd be a buy. So still, look at that 35 area. If it breaks, it would be a nice buy trigger on that breakout. But by waiting for the breakout, then you avoid this type of stuff instead of, getting in early. Sometimes I do get in early, but, even this action on this day right here would have gotten me out right here. If I'd have tried to enter it here, I would have been out. So I wouldn't have actually held through earnings either. So. All right, let's see. STLD. So the pattern I seen on this one last week was right here, this 38 spot. Right, it had its resistance, tapped it right there, kind of was tapping it right there, and it looked like a bull flag forming, and it definitely probably would have continued being a bull flag had Trump not came out and made the comments about not doing the infrastructure spending until 2018, and then once again it's kind of failed and broke. So at this point, nothing there. If these steel names recover back, and you get the breakout through 38, that might be a buy trigger. So we'll see what happens next week. They might recover. We'll just have to watch and see. TGP, another pretty decent looking shipping company. On Friday, it looked like it was going to break, and it actually did intraday through this 1950 area, but then it faded and closed all the way back down low. Sometimes that happens, guys, and you just have to close the position, or you could actually hold, but you got to use a tight risk on it. So but I mean, I would use this trend line here, as it looks like it's kind of following this trend line. I think this one, if the shipping sector, there's, like I said, several names that look pretty good. This one's one of them. So I'd keep watching this one here. And so, like I said, sometimes it takes a couple of tries for these breakouts to stick. But sometimes, this type of stuff happens, and it's just the way it is. Nobody knows whether it's going to hold it or it's going to pull back. So it's got to trade accordingly. Either cut your losses, make sure you have your stop levels in, and all right. So next up is MB, Mind Body. Another one that looked like it was going to make some new highs on Friday, but it actually kind of gave back a lot of it. So I think this one closed back at, this is showing after hours prices here, but this 26 spot was kind of the key level, you know, which was a level here, here, and then when it broke 26, it ran all the way up on Friday to almost this 2650 area. It had a high of 2650, which would have been right around this, broken this high back here. It would have been blue sky territory for it. But it ended up kind of fading all the way back, kind of like TGP, you know, and so, but the pattern still looks good. So this one through 26 still looks pretty good, mind body, and then if the market gets strong, you know, maybe it breaks out through 2650 and makes some new highs, but yeah, the pattern looks good, the chart still looks good. It just couldn't hold that breakout on Friday. GNK is another shipping company, so yeah, that's about 3 or 4 of them that still look pretty decent here. This one right around the 12 area was kind of a high back here, tested it again, you know, put in a higher low in here, back up to that level, so looks like it's pulling back again. So if it puts in another, you know, higher low in this area and then ramps back up, I think this one could break out. And so the area, the breakout area is right around, you could use this high of these last 2 candles at 1236 to 3035 area. But in general, right around 12 is kind of the area for the breakout. So another good looking shipping company to watch, GNK. All right, next up is IMGN. So IMGN was one that was on our watch list, my watch list on Thursday, and had a really nice pattern here. So let's see this spot here at 260. When it ran up 260, tapped it, and then it just kind of turned into a bull flag pattern, pulled back, tested 260 on this day, closed low, and then on Thursday it closed right up there at 260. And if you can kind of see the volume, let me just kind of pick the volume. You see a big volume spike down there on Thursday. So that was telling me, okay, maybe this thing wants to break 260. So it was definitely a top watch for me on Friday. And on Friday, it actually opened up at like 262, and I was watching it, but then it started to fade. And I don't know if that's, and by the way, guys, let me tell you guys, in general, wait for the market to settle at the open, you know, 15 minutes or so, because that's a time where it's very volatile. And if you just instantly buy, like, you know, the trade ideas that I post, like as soon as the market opens or whatever, you know, oftentimes you'll see these early morning spikes and then it fades off. And I don't want you guys to get caught up into that and just be buying after everybody, you know, and chasing a stock. Just let it settle in first for the first 15 minutes and see what happens. So, and then, so what happened with this one on Friday is that it kind of fell off and kind of dipped. And I was posting on social media that I'm still watching this thing because the intraday is not as important as the daily, and the daily looked really good. So later on in the afternoon, started to perk up, and when it got right to like 262, which was just above, let's see, so yeah, right in this area here around 262, you know, is where I entered my position, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this, see if this thing can actually go. And sure enough, you know, volume started coming in, and I was patient with it. It just kept ramping up. Started seeing volume coming in, and then it ramped up and closed all the way at the high of day. So this 276 is after hours price. It actually closed at 271, I think. But the high of this recent candle here was 270, so it actually cleared that recent high there in this candle, and now it closed at like 270. So, and then after hours, I think it went up to 274, 276. So I was telling you guys I'm going to hold this thing and swing it over the weekend, and I did. I had a pretty good sized position, and I'm holding the majority of it into Monday. I did take some partial profits on Friday, but still got a really big piece of this IMGN for Monday, and we'll see what happens if you get a big spike on it on Monday morning. Probably sell some into that, and once again, take a look at this pattern here. You can use this 260 and 240 to be conservative would be kind of an average depth of this pattern. So your first target, say 280. So if it goes to 280, you get 260 to 280. That's your first target. You can sell some, or you can kind of use this area down here right around 230. So I'd give you a 30-cent first target. So I'd give you 290, right? And so that's how you trade that, and that one still looks good for Monday. Should do well on Monday with the IMGN. See, HBAN, another bank here. Just kind of wanted to show. This was on the watch list last week, and once again, if you look through the banks, you'll see the same pattern. They're all kind of consolidating. This one's just sideways consolidation up here near the highs. So this one looks like it's going to make new highs next week. And whether you trade this one or XLF, I do think the financial sector is going higher. Court, here's a nice biotech stock that one of the members alerted me to. And I didn't trade it though, but it had this spot here at 850. You can see right in here where kind of had some resistance there, and then right in here it didn't really quite get to 850, but then it pulled back, failed to make new lows, and then rallied back up to this area here at 850. So once it broke through that high, that was a nice little trigger to go long. You had some good volume in the last few days. So this one, if you bought the 850 break, it's now at 885, and it still looks pretty good. Court CORT still looks pretty good. So just wanted to show that one. Nice pattern. Okay, OSUR, here's another one that I cut for small loss. And so here was what I was seeing on this chart pattern here was you had this big gap up, and you had this resistance here at 1140, consolidated, and then Friday had some good volume, and it tried to break through this 1140 area, and it did actually. Got up to 1147, and it looked like it was gonna be a nice runner, but then it faded, it pulled back below, and then it tried again during the day. It tried to get back up there near the highs, but then faded again. So I ended up cutting it right around 1130 or something like that, cut the position, and because it didn't do what I expected it to do, which was break out and run. So it's a small loss, and that's how it is. But I move on and look at the next one. But this one might set up again. We'll keep an eye on it. But that's just wanted to show you all that one. BLD, here's one. Same sector as AAON, right? So I like this one through this kind of 39 area. And this is a very nice coiling pattern here. You can see where it ran up, pulled back, kind of tested this 39 area, pulled back, put in a higher low than this one. See how it's kind of got a higher low? And then just keeps on basically coiling up and following basically this trend line here. So every little rally puts in a higher low and gets tight, 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 tight. So it's basically like a coil. And so this one, I have to check when it has earnings. I'm not sure if it has earnings, but one to watch here. This is BLD. I like this coiling pattern here. It's above the 50-day. It's getting very tight. And this one could be a nice pop early next week. Galt, here is another baby biotech stock. I don't think this one. I think this one closed at like 197. So this must have been an after-hour tick here. They put it at 2. But here's kind of the trend line here on this one, kind of following, kind of like this, right? So have big breakout, pullback, ramp up, pullback, and just kind of stair-stepping higher. So this one could be a runner on Monday. It has a pretty good looking setup. It's very volatile though, so you got to make sure and trade accordingly. These baby biotech stocks in general are just, I mean, they're super volatile, and I'm not the best at trading them, but you know, this one looks like it could be a nice move next week. GALT. All right, so DR Horton, home builder, once again, kind of in the building material section here. So here you had this, back here you had this big gap up, right? There's a big gap up and then a pullback all the way to the gap, right? Found support, and then now it's back up to the high, you know, these recent highs. Excuse me, 3150 area. One to watch. Sector looks good. Lennar is another one that looks okay, but this one looks a little bit better. So I would use this 3150 as a spot for DHI. That'd be your buy trigger. So next up is ABY. Like I said earlier, REITs. This is a REIT, and there's the breakout spot there. You can clearly see it there at around 22. Right, tested it, kind of pulled back, and then kind of just grinding higher into that 22 spot. Once again, not a fast mover, but the REITs do look strong, the real estate investment trust sector. All right, last up, we'll look at this MODN. So right around 11, you know, it's kind of has a lot of very spiky stock, kind of, you know, once again, very kind of volatile, doesn't really hold its gains. But not a bad looking setup. Probably not my top watch, but it looks decent here. Maybe on 11 break. Had some good volume Friday. So maybe through 11 could provide a nice trade. And so yeah, right around, let's see, 1090 was a high there. So this was one to watch. Like I said, decent volume on Friday. Closed at the highest price of this range. So it could provide a trade there. MODN, just one to watch. So, all right, guys, that's all I got for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your Sunday. And if you have any questions for me, shoot me an email, send me a tweet, and I can get back to you. So, have a great, well, hopefully we'll have a great week next week, and we'll see you guys on Monday. Thanks.